Hello, I'm Chad Merrrill, and we're here in Amelia Island at the FCCI conference. And I've got the privilege to interview and spend some time with Wes Lyons of the Eagle Venture Fund and Mike Arrieta of Garden City Advisors. And so we're glad you're here. We're going to talk about faith-driven investing and the impact that that has on this world. And so to get us started, I'm going to ask Mike, just tell us a little bit about yourself, how Garden City came about, and the vision behind it.
Absolutely. Good morning. Good morning. This is a beautiful place to have an event. Glad to be here today. So my story is a little different. I was the first one in my family born here in the U.S. My sisters, two older sisters, my mother and father are all from Puerto Rico. By the way, if you hear my voice crack a little bit, I had no voice the last 2 days, and then my daughter's coach did not show up to her first soccer game, so I played coach, so apologize if my voice goes in and out a little bit. So I was the first one born in my family here in Florida, actually, so back in my birth state. My father sold flan. Has anyone here ever had flan? It's really good. Y'all should put it for your dessert tonight if you don't have it. And so he sold flan on street carts on the corner of Miami. He did that until he sold furniture. I had a really bad stutter problem. It was God's blessing in my life. Thank God for a Florida governor, Governor Jeb Bush. He created a state disability grant for poor kids with disability. So I was a recipient of that. And that allowed me to go to private Christian school. 2 out of 3 kids, this is an interesting fact for you to never remember, or to always remember. Barna Research found this out. 2 out of every 3 kids that come out of poverty, it's directly correlated to them having a positive exposure. Just for them to see what is possible, just for them to see a whole new world, just for them to see families that are successful. So by me going to that school, I was able to see a whole different life, a whole different way of doing life. Kids that their parents held them accountable, parents who had their children study for SATs, parents who went to kids' sports games. So that really inspired me to say maybe there's a better way to live, and I really focused on that to try to say, how can I be successful in life so that my children don't have to suffer through what my sisters and I did. My father almost died when I was in high school, and that really changed my life. He went into a sugar attack and then a coma. He went on dialysis, pancreas transplant, kidney transplant, amputations. Then my mom got cancer. So it was really, really difficult for me. I decided at that point in time that I was going to try to support myself. So I started selling the world's best product, Cutco knives. Cutco's great. American made since 1949. If you need any, I'll be back there after the talk. But so I sold Cutco knives to put my way through high school and through college, support my family. I became the #1 salesperson in Cutco's history for a couple decades. And I did that to put myself through college. And then throughout college, I was totally lost, chasing the 3 Gs. And no, it was not generosity and God. It was girls, gold, and glory. And I chased those all because I had deep, deep, deep insecurities. I looked in the mirror and I saw a poor, Hispanic, stutter kid with disabilities that was overweight. And I said, I'm going to try everything in my power to chase after what the world applauds, which is success. And so I did that pretty well. Then I went off after college, still not a believer, and I went to this place called Silicon Valley in 2007, or actually at this point, 2010. Joined a startup, didn't even know what a startup was, and to God's grace, we got acquired by Dell. And I was like, wow, now I'm on Mount Everest. Now I'm the chief of staff to one of the CEOs of Dell. Still completely lost. Completely lost. And from there, my best friend told me about this guy named Jesus in 2013. I went on a mission trip to Haiti, and I got totally saved. I think it was just a straw that broke the camel's back. The Lord just was pursuing me. He pursues. He's the initiator, and we just have to be in an open response posture. And I was. And I think we all have a God-sized hole that only He could fill. So I became a believer in July 2013. It was incredible. And then I joined a small startup after that. It's called DocuSign. We were about 100 people. And by the time I left 6 years later, we went public for about $40 billion, about 5,000 to 6,000 people. I was the youngest ever vice president and general manager and all that good stuff. And then God really put something in my heart. We were on our baby moon celebrating the birth of our first child. And my wife and I were reading a book by a guy named John Mark Comer called Garden City. And I read another book, because I like to read 2 books at once, another book by Bruce Wilkinson called The Dream Giver. And this question really was posed on me, that if I could do anything in the whole world and money were no object, what would I do? If I could do anything in the whole world and money were no object, what would I do? And I've always known that answer. It's George. Where's my boy George on the somewhere? The gentleman that gave us his mic, George, the AV guy. That's what jazzes me up the most. It's people who do jobs that are not typically on stage. It's the backbone of America. It's the absolute foundation of America, these service workers, right? Or the person that was cleaning the plane this morning, or the janitors at the airport, or the front desk bellman here. I said, if I could do anything in the world, I would pursue the enrichment of all of these great, great jobs that go underutilized or undernoticed in our country. And I would give them dignity, respect, opportunity, give them an upward mobility path, and I would completely buy these companies that they work for and make them freaking awesome. I would put a Kingdom Chick-fil-A-like culture. I would do a Silicon Valley-like technology, and I would build an array of like 50 of the world's best investors you've ever seen that could help us grow these companies. And so that's what I launched in 2020.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Wes, tell us a little of your story.
It's an awesome story, and I love what you're doing at Garden City. There's so much goodness there. We really stand, I think Deborah painted a picture this morning of what's really broken on Wall Street, that we've kind of optimized to broken in the way that we fund things. And we stand at the gap between what Deborah described there and Jared and guys like that are building the pure flows of the world, where Mike and the team are acquiring businesses in a whole way. We're actually acquiring little pieces and going on the journey with them at Eagle Venture Fund. And when people see who came together at the 4 general partners of Eagle Venture Fund, they kind of look at it and they go, all right, that guy grew up with dirt floors in the Dakotas and went into the military. That guy was a missionary kid, a couple Texans, and then you have a guy who grew up in Namibia and a guy who grew up in Switzerland as a Swiss banker, and they go, what? How did you guys come together? It's a motley crew in some respects, but really it was a shared love for Jesus and a friend that hired us to execute a private equity fund for him together. And we found that we absolutely loved working together, and we had a shared passion that something is deeply broken in finance, and there was a bunch of entrepreneurs that really, really need values, law, and capital to see their vision come to life. And when we wrapped up getting to do that fund, that was kind of a one-off. We had the classic, all right, we love working together conversation, and said, well, what are we going to do next? And the Lord put it on our hearts to launch what is now Eagle Venture Fund. And 5 years later, in 23 companies that we've gotten to partner with and bring capital together, we've gotten a chance to build 3 funds and some specialty funds alongside it. And the Lord's really blessed it. Not without a ton of tough moments along the way. We were sharing some entrepreneurial journey stories earlier of, I went 0 for 60 on my first 60 pitches. I'm not nearly as good at selling as Mike. And we didn't get paid for years and years, and really the beauty of that in the world of finance is that we know when you haven't been paid for 5 years, you know when you're looking around, we're there because we love one another, we're there because we love the entrepreneurs, and there's a culture that's been formed that's about so much more than money. It's actually at its heart just listening to the Holy Spirit and saying, all right, Lord, where are you at work, and how do we join you? And it's been a really fun journey over these last few years.
Great. So if we start with a little bit of a level set, why don't you each tell us, so Mike, tell us just the blocking and tackling. What is Garden City? You're an investment company. What's your size? What's your investment thesis? What are you looking for? Just kind of tell us what Garden City is today.
Yeah, sure. To back up a little bit, well, I'll answer it really easily. Garden City is, think of Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company, has a baby with ServiceMaster and Chick-fil-A. So we're trying to build a Berkshire Hathaway where we're a holding company, a redemptive people-first holding company, and we buy small to mid-sized family companies, small to mid-sized family-owned companies. So exactly what Deborah said of this country needs more $50 to $100 million funds that are buying and owning small local companies. That's what we do. So the way I got into this space is there's this term called search funders. Someone goes to business school, Harvard Business School, Stanford Business School, and they say, I'm coming out of getting my MBA, but I don't want to go work for Google or McKinsey. I actually want to go be an entrepreneur. And so it's called ETA, Entrepreneur Through Acquisition. And they go, I'm going to go buy a business, a small local business, because I'm younger and maybe a little bit more relevant to this day and age of modernization and culture and leadership and technology, I'm probably going to put up good returns, and I'll buy a janitorial business, pool business, IT service staffing, whatever it may be. And the vintage IRR, the vintage returns in this industry the last 3 decades is 36% returns. Pretty crazy. So I saw that. I said, that's crazy. There's this inefficient market, exactly as Deborah said. There's this inefficient market that's messy, that's making annual profits between $1 and $10 million a year of annual net true earnings, right? Actual profit that this business owner is making. So I said, I don't want to just buy one of those. I actually want to buy a whole array of them, put them under a redemptive holding company, and actually come alongside all these CEOs. One of our CEOs, Luke Duncan's here. Perfect example. They started their company 40 years ago, janitorial building maintenance company, Eastern Tennessee, best reputation. His father was a believer and said, I'm now 70 or 80 years old. I have to figure out someone to pass this baton to. I have to liquidate all of my equity in this business. I need to diversify my wealth. So I want to find someone that could adopt my baby. So he found Garden City. We bought that business in 60 days. And his son that's been in the business for a while, we just told him, you're CEO. So now he still preserves his culture, and now we come alongside him with technology. We just rolled out a new HR system 2 weeks ago. We're helping him hire new executive key leadership. We're helping them expand across state lines. That's what we do.
Great, great. And Eagle, tell us about Eagle, practically, size, fun, types of things you do.
Yeah, we're about 35 million of assets under management in 23 companies on our third fund. And what's a little bit different from other venture funds is we actually build a lot of the companies that we invest in. So about a quarter of the companies that we've put money into, one of the general partners helped co-found, or we have 2 labs that are building companies. And then about another third of the portfolio, we kind of picture it like bringing them into the garage and put them up on the jacks, and we'll actually like change out a transmission and see a real business model shift. Because at its heart, we're looking for this amazing combination of the ability to grow incredibly fast, but have a really deep and profound impact. Things like what PureFlow is doing, where every time that they sell, somebody is empowered. Something where the company, just the mechanism of it working with margin, is bringing life to the people around them, whether it's casting the future of what the metaverse is going to be, or bringing health access to the poor, or combating modern day slavery, something that's inherently redemptive as they grow. So for us, it's finding those companies or building those companies, allocating capital to them, and then walking with them. It's being a coach. So the call of like, hey, I'm about to walk into the negotiation with Meta. Can I run through with you my strategy for how I'm going to go toe-to-toe with this massive giant, and being the call that they get, so that we can say, yeah, that makes sense, or actually tweak it like this, something like that.
Okay, so we'll stay on that for just a second. So you're a venture firm, for those who know. So you're investing in startup and early stage companies and helping them to grow or scale. And also just tell us a little bit, you've rounded out, I think this year you've started a City and a Freedom. Tell us a little bit about what those are, City and the Freedom Fund.
Yeah, we have an amazing set of founders who are having an impact all over society, but it's kind of all over. It's health access for the poor. It's trying to scale it. You talk about mentorship, trying to figure out mentorship and exposure to a different way of life is often the thing that's breaking people out of cycles of poverty and incarceration. It's things like trying to scale up mentorship. But it's all over different types of impact. And we started to see see themes develop, and we're all ex-military, and so we kind of think in this military way of, okay, we live in a battlefield, how are we going to make a difference? And for the City Fund, is the best way to describe it as a special operations team. And if you kind of, a special operations team made up of a series of businesses that can have a transformative impact on that community, though. So you might picture a rundown strip mall, and maybe it has 10 or 20 slots in it where you could, or storefronts where you could put a business. And the ability to come into a strip mall and say, we're going to fill these 10 storefronts with the most redemptive businesses we can possibly build, create, or move to this place. And so the ability to do that city by city. And so we've started in Dallas-Fort Worth, and the vision is to go to 100 cities and have 1,000 special operations teams working on the toughest problems, of whether it's health access or housing or transportation or food, and to just innovate to the point where we can deploy these teams location by location. And it's really the same idea in combating slavery. The Freedom Fund is bringing together cadres of special operations business teams. Like the one that we're working on right now is there's 50 million slaves in the world right now, and unfortunately we all have a heart-wrenching footprint of how our purchasing power is fueling that. And it really is just a lack of transparency between us and the person who mined the cobalt that went into our phone. And we're investing up and down the value chain of it. It's actually a massive job that shouldn't be done by government, should be done by businesses to produce the massive databases of who owns what and the ultimate beneficial owners. And so we have a cadre of businesses going after that problem. So building them into teams that go after really tough problems. And that's why we're forming our funds around places and causes, basically.
Yeah, thank you. So Mike, why don't you do the same? You know, you kind of describe venture and the thesis around that, and we refer to it as private equity, but you're actually a holding company, a little bit different structure. So if you tell us kind of the thought process behind permanent equity and Garden City and how you transition businesses, what's the thought process behind Garden City?
Yes. So we look as a business model in terms of private equity. Right? So the difference between venture capital and private equity, venture capital, typically y'all are the first money in to a startup-like company. There's a lot of different people on the capitalization table. They typically have a minority stake, and it's a new idea, right? High risk, high reward. Typical Silicon Valley is in Silicon Valley, out of 100 investments, 6 to 8 hit, the others fail, right? That's in Silicon Valley. I think West is probably better than that. For Garden City, private equity, typical what you hear, we are looking for businesses for us to take a significant stake. Ideally a majority stake, right? So 100% stake. Obviously, if the owner wants to roll over some equity, we'd love that. So if someone wants to sell us their HVAC business and says, hey, I probably have a year or two left in me, or I want to get out today, we would say, great, can we buy 100% of that business? Maybe you could roll over 5%, 10%. You know where the dead bodies are buried. You know what happens here during Christmas with this customer renewal, so forth and so forth. So we always try to keep a little bit of that owner to roll over some equity. The difference between us at a holding company and a private equity traditional fund is there's a lot. So I don't like private equity firms for the most part. There are some good ones out there, but for the most part, it's bad. If you just look at leverage buyout, how many people here have a ton of debt in their business? Probably not that many, right? When you look at all these great businesses that you vet, one of the first things they say is, we care for our people, we had no intention of selling, we have no debt, so forth and so forth. Private equity comes in, we look to sell as quick as humanly possible so our returns can be juiced up. We look to put as much debt as any bank could give us, and we look to bring in a new management team as quick as humanly possible. So we say, if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? So if you don't have a lot of debt, great. We don't want to put any debt. So across all of our companies right now, we have this much debt. We have zero debt. So we've never put a turn of debt on the business. There is healthy debt, but we don't like it, especially during times like these that show you about the uncertainty of the market. We feel great, right? We feel great. We don't have any covenants. The other thing about it is we keep the management team in place. If anything, we add to the existing management team. Like I said here with Luke Duncan, right now we're hiring a head of people. He's been operating a 300-400 person company with no head of people. So we're saying we're actually not going to try to juice our returns. We're going to actually take the returns that we could just pocket and give to our investors. And instead of doing that, we're actually going to reinvest more into the business. Another big common denominator of our holding company model is it's shared services. So right now we're hiring a full-time recruiter because our companies are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for staffing firms, right? So we're saying, why don't we just hire someone, pay them a full-time salary at Garden City Holdco, and we use it as a shared benefit. CFO, same exact shared benefit. Head of people that we're probably going to hire next year, shared benefit. CTO probably in the future, a shared benefit. So we look at it that they're in a family of companies. It's a very popular model with holding companies. And then the last one is we buy with no intention of ever selling these companies. That's the biggest thing, is we are called to steward these companies. The only reason why these owners are selling these great companies that are throwing off $1, $2, $5, $10 million a year free cash flow is they're retiring for the most part. If they were going to live forever, if they had someone to succeed them that could pay them, they wouldn't. So why would we? If our entire mission is to buy these companies, to cultivate environments for people to thrive, prosper, and flourish, why the heck would we sell them? Like, we're able to do every day what we said is our dream. If I said before my dream is to buy companies and redeem them and create a place for people to thrive, prosper, and flourish, selling it would not do that. Selling it would just be maximizing future returns to now. And there's a lot of other things I could talk about in terms of tax benefits and everything else of long-term hold. But I think this theme of buy and hold forever, evergreen, permanent capital, over the last year, Chad, you and I have seen this skyrocket. Mm-hmm. So many more firms are coming out to do this now. So many more investors are saying, this is where I want my dollars to be. Also, if you pay out a deal to your LPs, now they have to figure out where to go reinvest that capital. So many times the best capital, it just continues to be deployed within the companies.
Yeah, thank you. So Wes, we're at the Fellowship of Companies for Christ International live stream and conference. We met, I believe, at the Lion's Den in Dallas. We've been involved in a couple of faith-driven investor conferences together. So there's this significant movement that's been growing across the country in faith-aligned, value-driven, purpose-built type companies, faith-driven investors. So I think you all would consider yourself in that, genre at Eagle Fund. So how do you blend that? How do you blend the concepts of, financial returns? You've got responsibilities to investors to return their capital, and kingdom impact. How do you all think about that at Eagle?
That's a great question, and at the risk of being slightly awkward, I hope that over the years we'll actually start getting different questions, because we do such a good job that it'll switch to, you can hear all the tailwinds to the business models that you can start out with the idea of trying to create great jobs like you're doing at Garden City, and then look back and go, wait, that actually worked out in the long run. So the goal, actually, we started our tagline in 2017 was significant impact and significant returns. And we're talking about trying to really coin the phrase of just rejecting the tension between, there are concessionary returns, there are places where concessionary returns are needed, and they're the right way to take something forward. But in our industry, picking amazing, highly scalable businesses that by their nature growing are producing more impact is actually, we see tons of virtuous cycles between having a huge impact and actually having a really great return. So it's actually, we see them hand in hand going up and to the right. The Lernahan's talk about their quad slide of kind of impact on one axis and financial return on the right. We think it's the job of great fund managers, great holding companies to go to the top right of that. And then if people want to find concessionary returns, it's almost like, hey, prove you can do it amazingly in both axes, and then come off the returns a little bit because you're going to Kazakhstan or something where it's really hard. You shouldn't, we believe in our industry, there's so many tailwinds to high purpose businesses that want to transform society. Like we have, so the talent game is just so different. If your purpose is ending poverty in whatever city, you can get just a stream of folks coming out of Berkeley, Harvard, and all kinds of pedigrees that come in for half the salary that they can get at another place because you're making a difference. And that's just one of many virtuous cycles that we play into.
Thank you. So likewise, Mike, what are some of the values of Garden City, and how does that manifest in the companies that you all are buying, that you're partnering with, you're trying to infuse into? So how do you take the values that you've just shared here about having a redemptive edge, human flourishing, thriving that you want to bring. How do you infuse that into a company, or how do you balance that? Again, also knowing that you have investors and you have a responsibility for returns.
Yeah, that's a great question. Garden City is a collective of 50 investors investing as one, as you know, right? So that's really important. We're a collective of 50 families. I would say of those 50, 45 call themselves followers of Christ. So we're a collective of 50 families investing as one. In this room, we have the Mitchells, we have Dwayne Donner, we have the Merrills. These three couples, for example, they are totally committed to making sure that whenever we incorporate and acquire a new company and we put them under our Garden City family of companies, we are now walking alongside these management teams. So our first value of Garden City is Christ-centered. Our second one is others-focused, right? So what we really try to do, Mark Whitaker was just telling me about T-Factor, that their first value is we honor God by serving people, right? So that's all we try to do. Very simply put, we have very simple things that we do to serve people, to honor people, to focus on the actual human, right? To actually focus on the human. So every Monday morning, this morning, our holding company, we get together and we just pray over all of our leaders, right? That's what we do every single Monday morning. We have a monthly call with all of our leaders and we ask them, how can we pray for you and your teams? We're talking about with your wife, Robin, and some of our investors. Lee Davis's wife told us at our investor summit, how can I get involved? These are my companies that I'm involved with. Can we do a monthly prayer call that we host for all of our companies and their employees, right? Other things we do is we bring our CEOs to events like this. We write something I did for a pool company that we owned is they did a Chinese buffet every year, and everyone used to bring a bunch of liquor. And they used to do, I forgot what it's called, the Black Panther, something Santa. And everyone used to buy each other tequila, rum. It was a disaster. And so I said, we're going to throw that out. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to write 80 letters, custom letters to every single person, to them and their spouses. The other thing we're going to do is we are going to make sure that every manager, because we did a Christmas bonus, every manager hands out a bonus to their employee, to their team member, and they write them a handwritten thank you letter. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to exclude alcohol. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to honor people one by one and affirm them. I mean, there was tears everywhere, right? It's because we're focusing on the human being, right? We're focusing on the human aspect. So the way that we live out Jesus is trying to be the hands and feet of Jesus, is seeing people as they are. This weekend, I was talking to one of our CEOs, and him and his wife are in marital counseling, and I said, it sounds like you guys need to get away. Can we bless you guys by sending you to one of our investors' houses? And he said, you have no clue what that would mean for us, right? So these are just the things. We try to celebrate life. We try to work hard. We try to focus on others. But we really try to lean on our collective of 50, knowing that we're stronger together, and say, hey, investors, hey, shareholders, how can you help our family of companies with what they're going through, with cultural, marital, spiritually, et cetera? So we try to do it together.
Yeah, so likewise, Wes, similar to what we were saying before, how do you foster that? I mean, how do you foster the human flourishing? I mean, you've got a defined city redemptive fund, and you've got a defined freedom fund that's around flourishing. You also likewise have investors also. So how do you all, manage that tension of the returns, and what do you do to proactively try to, foster the values that you all hold so clear?
First and foremost, we're servants to the entrepreneurs. So we have Eagle University, where we're trying to just pour out the experience of across the 4 general partners. We've started 67 companies and been through a lot and made a ton of mistakes. So Eagle University is just getting on there and saying, here's a mistake I made. Here's a template for how to not make that mistake. Whether it's everything from how to build a sales pipeline to how to run a board of advisors, board of directors. So many things about entrepreneurs have to be so many things to so many people. We just try to pour out to them through Eagle University. We have Eagle Leadership Development, where we're just pouring. We have an amazing man pouring into their formation, both spiritually and just being a place that's not a capital provider to help them figure out their spiritual formation practices. Have they learned to listen to the Holy Spirit? Have they learned to take days away and just be silent and get connected to the Lord? Have they taken time with their family? And then at the Eagle Foundation, we're pouring a lot of resources into building the ecosystems around the problems we're trying to solve. So in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, we're just finishing up a 100-something interview process of on the foundation side of leaders all over the city trying to figure out what are the biggest needs in the city, what are the biggest opportunities in the city, and what's kind of the low-hanging fruit. And then we're going to handpicking leaders to get around the table together on the top 10 issues that they've told us they want to take action on and script them through, trying to kick off a bunch of working groups to see things move in a city, because we know we're one of many capital providers on these big issues. And so if we can help connect the dots in the ecosystem where we're part of it, then everybody's going to win, and there will be some amazing companies that are part of that, but also just trying to give back to the communities and see the ecosystem built, because you can't change cities, you can't end modern day slavery, you can't do massive things like that without really participating as a team player in something much bigger than yourself.
Great. So Mike, you were telling us a little bit about how you try to infuse values in companies. So you are an investment firm, so you attract investors, and for the last couple of thousand years, the primary language of investors has been return on investment. That's really the only benchmark that we really had nomenclature to talk about. So how do you blend those two? What's your theory about infusing Christian values into a company? Fostering those within the company, how that relates to returns.
Yeah. I think if you're an atheist, the smartest business decision you can make is run your business like a Christ-led business. It's just good business. It is, right? You look at all these business models that are actually not even Christian businesses, right? Like Trader Joe's or Publix or Costco or Patagonia, and over and over and over again. And what they do is they honor their people. And something I say a lot is happy employees equal happy customers, which equals a thriving business. It's just fact, right? It's just fact. And so that's not why we do it, but it definitely helps that the way that we want to run our business in a redemptive way also results in a more profitable business. To answer your question, I think that for us, it's really about two things. It is profit, because without profit, no one has a job, and we don't have the opportunities we can have, and we are called to be stewards of our dollars, but it also is definitely purpose. On profit, our business model is super simple. For us, if we buy a business for 4 times of their cash flow, so if a business makes, I'll keep it easy, $1 million a year of earnings, and we pay that owner $4 million, that means if that business does not grow at all, and you put 0 debt on it, you're getting a 25% cash on cash yield. First year, you make $1 million of your investment. Second year, you make 2, 3, 4. So in 4 years, you recouped your investment. That's a 25% cash on cash return. If you buy a business for 5 times of that cash flow, now it's a 20% cash on cash return, right? So for us, we're very disciplined going into actually paying the business owner a fair value of what that business is worth, right? And the value that we could add for it, and making sure that we know that we're probably going to have to add a lot of investments. A lot of these small, mid-sized, founder-led, family-owned, lower middle market businesses are undercapitalized. For the most part, they are. So we know that we have to reinvest a lot to actually keep it sustainable and profitable over the decade to come. On the flip side, we're also looking out of the gates in diligence to say, what are the areas that we could actually dignify people, give them respect, purpose, opportunity, put them on an upward mobility track, give them leadership development, as you said, Wes, that we know that if we do this, it's because they will be blessed, they will experience the Lord in this, they will actually realize that they'll go back home as a better wife or better husband, right? And in return, it'll also make our business better and more profitable. Maybe the first year, net income decreases because you have a business that's making $5 million a year and you're going, well, we want to do leadership development and we want to hire a chaplain and we want to increase everyone's wages because they haven't been paying them well. Also, the workplace is not fun to work when. This place looks horrible, right? It looks like it's the 1980s in here. Let's modernize that. All of that takes investment for the people. So that year, maybe we don't make 5, maybe we make 3.5 million. But I guarantee you, if you give me 4, 5, 6, 7 years, we'll make that without a doubt and even more in the future. So everything we do is kind of blended, Chad. It's purpose, profit. It's all blended in. I think it's hand in hand. You can't have one without the other.
Great. So Wes, I'm going to take it a little bit differently. So some folks in here have been venture investors, but many probably have not, and many listening. And also we had 3 entrepreneurs on here, lots more listening, and faith-driven entrepreneurs all over the world. How do you evaluate where you invest? You know, we're starting a company. We're trying to figure out what to do. All 3 of these guys that were up here earlier went through a fundraise process. I've seen you at a lot of pitch competitions. You know, take us inside Eagle a little bit, and how do you think about where you invest money and what are criteria and things of that nature?
Yeah, for us, while we're hyper-focused on faith-aligned founders with a huge impact, we're very narrow on the business models that we're looking at, where it's almost always a business-to-business company. So a company that's coming and helping a business do something better, faster, or cheaper, and it's usually tech-enabled in some way. So a software-as-a-service company, a tech-enabled service, or a fintech. And so while we're getting hundreds of deals coming in across the transom every month, very quickly you get down to, hey, do they have an incredible impact? Are they a B2B tech-enabled service company? And then you take the couple of those and take them through deep diligence and find out, do they have the team to go the distance and do their cash cycles work and things like that? So we have a rigorous process where we're taking them through and just figuring out, you have some front-end questions about, hey, if this works brilliantly, how is the world different? And just trying to open-endedly let entrepreneurs kind of tell you what their dream for success looks like, because you're hearing their values right off the bat. So if you're talking to somebody that you're thinking about partnering with them in some way, asking them questions like, how is the world different if you're successful, or what does success look like to you, is really powerful to figure. Or just asking them straight up, what are the values of your company? Mm-hmm. That's one of the easiest ways when we're getting, oh, that looks like a B2B company that looks like it might fit some of our business models. Just asking them their values, and you pretty quickly, or how they see the world differently, you pretty quickly are finding out, is this a values-driven founder? That's some of the tricks of how we partner. But we're also, because we're working with companies, in some cases up to 2 years before we put capital to work. So we've got 2 business labs where we just pour out effort, and in many cases we're just giving time to founders and and that's basically our ministry. We're bringing capital and consulting to companies, and many of those we're going to pour tons and tons of hours into helping them figure out, and then we're not going to end up being the right capital partner for them, or they'll discover this wasn't actually the right call for their life or something. So it takes a lot of time of pouring in that effort, and then being able to put the capital to work once you've gone through all that process.
Yeah. So Mike, just a little bit on a macro. We turn on the news. We heard Dr. Carson the last couple of days. Inflation is the topic we're hearing a lot about. Interest rates are rising. You know, the economy's tenuous. We've got a war in Ukraine. Energy crisis is going on. How does that inform kind of the landscape? Where do you see opportunities? Why do you all like what you like? And, you know, just as investors and folks that are thinking about, you know, growing and preserving wealth, how do you process what's going on in the world and think about where Garden City makes investments?
Yeah, something I say a lot that some people give me slack for, that they don't like when I say this, but boring is beautiful. So I love boring, unsexy, non-cyclical businesses, right? Love them, love them, love them. It doesn't matter if interest rates are at 19%. It doesn't matter if unemployment is at 10%. You and Robin, if your AC is not working in the heat of the summer, you are going to call someone to come over quickly and replace your furnace or your AC, correct? It's just fact, right? It does not matter how bad it is. If you're at a hospital, you need a janitorial service, or if you're at a manufacturing plant, you just need it no matter what, right? So we look for businesses that no matter what the headwinds are going to be, We look for non-cyclical businesses that will weather the storms like they did in '08, right? So we look for critical services that are not nice to have, but must-haves. So that's what we look for. There's three things we look for when we buy a business. One is profitability, two is people, and three is projections. So profitability, do these companies make at least double-digit net margins? Now, I don't want to hear about EBITDA margins, right? EBITDA before interest, taxes, depreciation. Last time I checked, all those things actually cost money. Like, you have to pay taxes, right? So it's how much money is a business actually profiting every year? I asked the owner, okay, you made $3 million EBITDA, but how much did you actually take home if you wanted to take home everything? Are you talking about cash flow? Yeah, cash flow, $2 million. Okay, so your business makes $2 million a year. So we look for businesses that are highly profitable, that have a history of profitability, double-digit net margins. The second thing we look for is people. We've looked at over probably 1,500 companies now in the last 2.5 years. We've made an investment in 5 out of 1,500. And the reason is, this is probably the biggest reason, almost every small to mid-sized business that we acquire or make a minority investment is an owner hustle. If the owner gets hit by a bus tomorrow, the business, you will see the financials immediately dip, crash almost, right? So they are all held on by the owner. You ask the owner a couple diligence questions in terms of, tell me about your biggest customer. Oh, that's Billy. Billy's my best friend. I go golfing with him every Tuesday, blah, blah. Tell me about the headquarters you guys are building. Oh, I found that because my next door neighbor told me about it. I designed the whole plans. That's an owner hustle. If we come in as a new owners, we're buying that entire hustle of that person. And if they're no longer there goes the special sauce of it. The other thing we look for in people is how strong is a non-owner management team, right? Because these are the people that are incorporating the business. So does this company have a non-owner management team that is super strong and solid and passionate about people the way we are? And the last is projections. Do we actually foresee that this is an industry that that's actually needed in the years to come, right? So there's a lot of industries that we see that we're just saying, we're not interested in that industry. Like, one industry that you and I talked about last week is the man security industry. Is man security here to stay? Is it not? Is everything becoming technology, right? Do you need security guards? That's a pretty good conversation. However, if I see a deal that's an electric vehicle installation company that has 1,000 workers that's installing electric vehicles in the Southeast, I want that company. I see where those macro trends are going, right? I want to buy into that. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. So let's take the last 10 or 12 minutes here. Someone that all of us know and has been a great friend of FCCI, Henry Kasner, I think may have coined, and he says, every investment has an impact. What's your impact going to be? And let's try to kind of unpack a little bit, maybe away from Garden City and Eagle and just into the macro faith-driven investing environment. Why is it important for us to think about where we invest our money? Does God care about where we invest our money? What are your thoughts about that and how that kind of informs where you all head?
It's really a personal conviction journey. For me, I got into the industry as a financial advisor, and at first I checked out what was then the biblically responsible investing movement, and I was just kind of not impressed by the negative vetting of like, hey, we're going to cut out some tobacco and things like that. I was already passionate about combating slavery and their way of, the particular fund group that I looked at, their way of dealing with modern day slavery was to divest of Southeast Asia, and I was like, that's not very nuanced way to deal with it. But then I started, the Lord, as we got a chance to invest in amazing entrepreneurs, I got really excited that I was seeing companies like Liveful, who's bringing health access to the poor and oppressed, and seeing entrepreneurs that were making a really great profit and transforming whatever their passionate area was at the time, and started seeing companies in public markets like Eventide who were really performing well because they were really looking at the 360 of how a company is touching everybody that they interact with, and got really excited that, wow, every everybody needs to know about this, and have helped a lot of advisors trying to figure out, okay, how do I integrate this into my practice, and talking with Kingdom advisors. So for many people, I'm convinced as you look industry-wide, it's finding an advisor who actually can help you figure out, okay, most people aren't going to do a real estate investment or a venture capital investment like the things that we do at our firm. But most people need to go to their advisor or go through, like Vipperman has helped a lot of people with his courses where he'll take people through 2 days of what's your passion and what first step can you take of getting involved in some way. For many people, it's finding an advisor who understands the landscape and can help them get down to, okay, your passion is Africa, let's go talk to Talenton, or your passion is legal defense, let's go talk to folks who are in defending freedom and things like that. So it's a discovery process, and for most people, it's finding advisors that can really help them walk the journey.
Yeah. So similar, I happen to know you've got two advisors that have been really great friends of FCCI and Faith along. Horst Schulze, who's spoken here many times and founded the Ritz-Carlton where we are here, and the Kathy. Dan was an original member of the Young Leadership Group of FCCI. And so as you think about it and as you learn from them, what's the impact that you hope to have through Garden City? When you look back in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, what's the impact and what you learn from guys like that of what
It's
you're
funny you bring both of those names up. When I pulled in here this morning, I was struck by being at the Ritz-Carlton on Amelia Island because Horst Schulze, one of our board members and investors, he and his wife have a unit right here. And so I called Horst when I got here in the lobby a couple hours ago. I said, Horst, you won't believe where I'm at right now. I'm at the Ritz-Carlton Amelia Island. And I will not repeat you what Horst said because it's not proper for stage. But he's very, said, that place, if I was running it, it would be so different. It's still a good place, but it was better when I ran it. And he goes, I have to go. You won't believe where I'm at. I go, well, where are you at? He goes, I'm with Dan Cathy right now. And Dan just surprised me at Chick-fil-A this morning. He just made a $10 million donation to Auburn Hospitality, and it's named the Horst Schulze Center of Hospitality at Auburn University.
Wow.
And they just surprised him with that this morning. So funny you say that. It's incredible the impact that Horst has had on hospitality, as well as Dan Cathy. The people like Dan Cathy and Horst Schulze and you and Robin and so many others have had on me is, I think it ties really closely into the question you asked Wes about, so God obviously cares about money, right? It's mentioned, it's the number one topic most mentioned in the Word of God is money. But what God really cares about is people, right? That's really what God cares about is people. He's out to pursue all of our hearts and to give us all shalom and to give us all a life of enrichment and a life of adventure, right? And a life that we could thrive. So that's the reason why we are about people, right? That's the reason why Luke's janitorial business fires me up. It's not just a janitorial business. It's a business comprised of 300 to 400 people that are God's sons and daughters, right? And the world sometimes sees them as a cog in the wheel, right? Just a serial number. And I say, no. Just as much as that person there is God's beloved, as am I, right? So that's why our name is Garden City. In the beginning, when God created the whole world, he created the garden, and he put us in it to thrive, prosper, flourish, co-labor alongside him, work alongside him. He also called us to rest. Obviously, we messed it up along the way. But now, as believers, we actually have a stinking opportunity here on this world, this short little life we have left. We have an opportunity to co-partner with God, grab the kingdom of God in the garden and bring it into our cities. Hence Garden City, right? We could bring what he started in the garden and bring it into our cities. And the fact that we get to do that in the marketplace, I think is the greatest opportunity we have as investors, as business owners, as whatever we are, is whatever in our marketplace. One common denominator is we all work, right? So regardless if we're investing, buying, operating, working within, we all have an opportunity to bring the garden into our cities. So by Horst Schulze and Dan Cathy, they're they're mentors of mine. They're like godfathers of mine, right? Just showing me how they've done it before on focusing on people, and their profit always follows.
Great, great. So in 60 or 90 seconds as we start to wrap up here, what's kind of a parting thought that you would like to give folks about? It could be about Eagle, it could be about investing, it could be about the impact that they can have, where they use their influence. What would you like to share, Wes?
I think it's an incredibly exciting time. Just to chime in right on top of what you're dead on, Mike, of where this is going. I think we have such opportunities with a whole generation of entrepreneurs that are making transformative impact on the things that for generations we've been giving into things like combating modern day slavery or seeing our cities change. And we have opportunities now to actually get the investment bucket of our financial life going towards the same goals that we've been giving to for so long. And I think there's going to be a blurring of lines over the next generation between what we're investing in alongside what we're giving to, and seeing them go towards the same ends. Because at its core, we're going to stand in a very short time before our dear Lord and Savior Jesus, and we want to hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Not, "Oh, good job giving," but wow, kind of missed it. Like there was some great opportunity on the investment side. So I think there's a lot of really exciting opportunities for more and more of both buckets of capital to really go after the things that make your heart beat and make Jesus' hearts beat.
Great, thank you. Last thoughts?
If you are a business leader here, I would highly encourage you, what is one way before the end of this year that you could allow your people to be seen, recognized, and heard? I know that the former CEO, Synovus, one of the things that he did was he would always do an internal net promoter score of their employees. And he said, "We never be excellent. However, I want you to reach out to me to let me know how I could do better, how we could do better. And if I don't, that's on me," right? So what's one thing that y'all could do? Is it write a card to people? Is it host a bi-weekly lunch with just 5 to 6 people, right? Is it pray for others? Is it having a celebration day? Is your company too serious and not realizing that we're called to actually live a life of celebration? Go do something fun, right? So whatever it is, what is one thing that you could do to allow your people to feel seen, heard, recognized? One of the biggest things people want, one of the biggest things they want is, and Hort Schultz taught me this, the first thing J.D. Power figured out after interviewing the people is I just want to feel as though I'm part of something. I just want to feel as though I'm part of something. They're working for something, but they don't feel as they're part of something. Number 2, I don't feel like I actually have a voice, right? Number 3 is I don't see where my future lies here. So what about a monthly town hall that you show how the company's doing, that you show them how they're involved, that you show them what's coming up next, right? What about that transparency? So I just encourage you, what is one thing you could do to allow your people to be more seen, more recognized, and more heard before the end of the year?
So as we wrap up, I'd just like to say, Eagle Venture in Garden City, they're doing great things. They're impacting. I hope we've shared a little bit of how you can do with your investments. You're going to hear more this week. There's other great friends in the room. Sovereign's Capital, John Coleman's going to be speaking with us in a couple of days. There's a few folks that are here. Ron Blue Trust is full of advisors who try to help us understand how do we make investments, how do we have redemption in what we do. And I guess I would leave it with saying that on any Sunday in America or around the world, you can walk into a church and you'll probably hear a sermon, or you can potentially hear a sermon about what God thinks about the 10%, what we should give, what our philanthropy could look about. I don't know that I've ever heard a sermon that speaks about the 90%. And that's really why FCCI exists, and Faith Driven and other organizations around. And the fact of the matter is, around the world, that capital is influence. And where we invest our money, where we invest our time, really impacts the world. We had 3 guys up here that both influence and capital kind of inform where they're going. And I just really encourage you to talk to these guys, talk to folks from Ron Blue and Sovereigns and National Christian Fund and Helping Hands, Brian's in the room, that help enable people to understand and reconcile how you use the resources, how you steward what you have. And the question that I asked them, that I would just leave with you, there's a statement that every investment has an impact. What do you want your impact to be? So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Wes.
Thank you.
And look forward to talking more about this topic.